Data subject rights. So one of the pillars of GDPR is that it gives data subjects control over how their data is used and collected. So in connection with those rights, entities have an obligation to help an individual exercise them on request. So if a data subject requests exercise of its data subject rights, in general, an entity has 1 month and they can get an extra extension, a 1 month additional extension under certain circumstances to exercise that data subject's rights. Also, in general, data subject rights must be exercised at no cost to the individual. So those will be costs borne by the entity, by the controller. So some of the key data subject rights are set forth in this table. GDPR provides many data subject rights, but these are essentially the ones which are going to impose the majority of obligations on entities required to comply with GDPR. The rights are a right of access provided under Article 15 of GDPR, which is essentially a right to request from an entity a copy of all personal data that that entity has about the individual. A right of rectification provided under Article 16 of GDPR, and that is essentially a right to, as I alluded to earlier, have information stored by an entity about you corrected. Article 17 of GDPR provides a right of erasure or right to be forgotten, which is a right to have an entity delete your personal data under certain circumstances. As we were just discussing, consent is almost always going to be the basis for lawful processing. And if a data subject revokes their consent, you can no longer process their personal data. But under Article 17, that individual also has a right to force your entity to return that personal data or delete it. Article 18 provides a right to restrict processing, which is similar to right of rectification and erasure, because in many cases that will be the end result, but it's in some ways a pause button on processing. So a data subject has a right to stop for an interim period an entity's processing of their information. Right to data portability under Article 20 of GDPR is a right essentially to, it's similar again to the right of access, but it also adds that when you request your personal data from an entity, it must be provided in a readily available format, one which that individual will be able to easily use and access. And finally, under Article 21, data subjects are provided with a right to object. This is essentially the right to object to the use of personal data in certain ways, such as the use of their personal data for direct marketing purposes.
For more information, click on the link below or visit databrackets.com.